Hello and welcome to Politics. Today I'm Farrukh Pitafi. Once again we are going to talk about Pakistan's economic realities. Economics is important as per one of senior journals of the past. Napoleon Bonaparte, an army marches on its stomach. A country also runs on the basis of its economy, and if economy is strong, country actually goes far. But we have seen in the past and even today that since at least I remember, the economy has been more or less struggling. We keep on committing to reforms, and those reforms occasionally are forthcoming. There are times when they are not. So today it is high time to take stock of things as they are. There are two major triggers and two minor triggers that one has to actually talk about. The first trigger is, of course, inflation. Inflation seems to be going up and up. Fuel prices went up. Federal Minister for Information and Broadcasting yesterday actually pointed out that commodity prices are going down and they are likely to go down. But inflation so far has been quite a serious issue, so much so that the opposition parties think that they can launch a campaign against the government and create a lot of ruckus. This is an important aspect, you have to remember that. The second thing is the situation with the dollar and current account deficit. Our rupee against dollar has been weakening. It has weakened further today, unprecedented heights. And while it is happening, one actually expects that at least current account deficit will go down, but that doesn't seem to be happening either. Current account deficit is there, even though Pakistan gets many boons. For example, Pakistan's remittances per annum have reached new records. So what exactly is happening with these two things? Then of course the other two triggers. One, our federal Prime Minister's advisor now on finance is in Washington DC, and he is negotiating with IMF, and we still have to see how actually that translates into reality. The second matter is of FATF, because that again is quite a serious challenge. We are going to talk about all these matters, and I don't know whether we have the cards with us or not. If we have, I will ask the producer to tell me. Okay, right. So let me introduce the guest in the studio and the guest on Skype. We are awaiting a third guest who's going to come. If they join us, I'm going to introduce them as well. In the studio, we are joined by Shakil Ahmed Rami, who is an economist with a special emphasis on the regional dynamics, and I keep on talking about his China expertise. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. And on Skype, we are joined by Dr. Salman Shah, who is not only former federal finance minister, he also advises the Chief Minister Punjab on economy. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, for being part of the program. Well, Dami Saab, with your permission, I have to start with Dr. Saab. Dr. Saab, this government, your government, has been talking about measures to bring down the cost of things. But that seems to be a tall order still. And of course, the government has decided to introduce targeted subsidies. We heard about petrol prices being controlled for motorcycles and smaller vehicles. But how are you going to execute that? And what exactly is contributing to this inflation? There must be multiple factors. Can you identify them all?
Yes, Mr. Pitafi, I think the first thing which we must understand is that trade related data which relates to imports, almost 25% of our imports are now energy imports, which means that all the oil we need for transport, all the coal and LNG and oil we need for our power companies, it is all imported. So every time you switch on the lights, the import bill starts to run. Every time you sit in your car, the import bill starts to go up. So the first challenge really to the economy, which I can call a structural challenge, is that we are an import-dependent energy country, which makes us very, very vulnerable to external shocks. And we are right now going through an external shock where Brent has gone from almost $40 a barrel to $85 a barrel. And along with it, all the other fossil fuels have also gone up. So the first thing is was it possible to have less imported energy policies? And the answer is yes, because we created a lot of thermal capacity and we got very long-term 30 years contracts at very inflated prices. Instead, we could have gone for renewables, and that could, if we had added 10,000 megawatts of renewables instead of 10,000 megawatts of thermal, today we would not be suffering this external shock and our economy would be much more stable. So the first thing is that the energy prices is now driving our current account deficit. It is also driving our financial account, and it is driving our balance of payments. And that is really a very challenging thing. Yeah. The other thing is that if we are going to come out of this, there are a couple of things which we need to do. Number one, hope that this sudden boost in energy prices also subsides at the same pace as it has gone up, and that may happen over the next couple of months. But the more important thing is that the rupee, the weakness of the rupee is dependent on how much reserves we have. And right now our reserves are about 3.5 months of imports, and that is not enough. We need reserves of about 5 to 6 months of imports. If we have those kind of reserves, then the central bank can manage the value of the rupee within a narrow band, and then it would also mean that inflation would come down. Now, as
Dr. Shah, I understand you have pointed out that energy prices are going up because of these factors. But when you talk about pulses, when you talk about chicken meat, when you talk about vegetables, they are also going up. And this is an agricultural country. Why do you think that there is such a comprehensive rise so far? It might go down, I understand, but still the costs are high.
Because our yields are the lowest in the world, and we have not paid attention to the agriculture sector in a very long time. So we have become a net importer of food commodities, and this year you have seen we have got sugar, and we have got cooking oil, we have got wheat. All of these are imported. So one of the thing is that hopefully with better seeds and better management of the agriculture sector, we'll see an increase in yields, and as a result we may have bigger crops which we can manage and which will be sufficient for not only us but also for Afghanistan. And it's very doable. Unfortunately, we have not paid attention to agriculture in the last 10 years, and so that has come home to roost. We have not made any.
That's a good point, sir. Dr. Saab, allow me to bring in the second guest. One aspect that is quite amazing, Shakil Rami, is that whenever we are talking to an economist, usually time, right, and the scope are two concerns that politics and economics see differently. When you are a policy planner, you understand that these dynamics will be controlled and then things will improve. But when you are a common man on the street, the problem is if agricultural producer is going to pick up in 2 years, 3 years, I mean, in the intervening period, I am destroyed. I can be destroyed. The biggest problem right now seems to be that the government is ready to introduce targeted subsidies on fuel prices, for example. How are you going to, or how is the government going to make sure that a petrol pump or a gas station is going to give that fuel to a motorcycle or motorcyclist and not yours truly, just because the pump wala is my friend, and he might actually choose to offer me and then say quota is out.
Farrukh, I think if you ask me, so when you're talking about all these things,
Yeah.
we don't have the policy framework.
Okay.
Sorry to say. Shah Sahab also remain in the policy making for a long time. For example, today again we are hearing these things of we import fuel. That's why our prices are increasing.
Yeah.
Look, 1994 power policy. Did any government try to change that policy?
All right.
Even in the CPAC, you were offering the same policy, and then come the you can say so they get the same investment. Although in the 97 when the Nawazli came into the power, they started to talk about IPPs, but
Yeah.
they did nothing in the two terms. Policy is the same. Musharraf time policy is the same. One thing second. Look what we did
You
with
just
the
proved my point that I just pointed out earlier. I said that time somehow loses meaning, right?
no time no.
I'm talking about inflation, real inflation, on ground at this moment, and a citizen is affected.
I'm coming to that point, but if you allow me one thing.
Yeah.
Second, what we did with the gas, without thinking anything, we went for the transportation gas. We brought the gas to the transportation.
CNG and all.
CNG all.
Yeah.
So that is the policy framework that is actual failure.
Yeah.
Second thing, inflation. We heard a lot about, and Salman Shah Sahab is again talking about agriculture. We
Yeah.
did anything. Look, in these 3 years, we could do a lot of things.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the past because they are taking everything to the past. In 3 years, what we did to the agriculture, we brought a brilliant man on the agriculture ministry, Fakhr Imam, no doubt he's brilliant. But you stitch his hand against the wall.
How?
You have bringing so many other people. Some are advisors, some is that advisor, some is that capacity, that capacity. And even on his proposals, and now people who don't understand agriculture in the cabinet, they think this is not doable. So we have to see what we did. We only brought out one point. Middleman is the problem. That is the only improvement I can see. We're talking about the CPAC corporation, agriculture corporation, the CPAC.
Okay.
So do we have the corporate policy for the introduction of the corporate?
You are giving me more questions rather
So
than
that's what I'm saying.
giving me an answer.
Inflation. So there, I don't think if they say we give the subsidy. So that is one of the area where the IMF talks are going on. And you are saying we will give the relaxation in the taxes.
Right.
Already IMF saying to increase the taxes. So you are where you are. Either you have to walk out of the IMF negotiations because they are asking the same thing.
Right.
We have to work out, you have to increase the taxes, you have to eliminate the subsidies.
Right.
If you don't get that thing, that means that you are balanced.
That's a good point. Let me go back to Dr. Salman Shah. Dr. Saab, while we are talking about inflation, let me ask you how much of this inflation is because there is pressure from IMF that government of Pakistan has to cut down subsidies and has to actually pass on the cost to the common citizens.
Look, I think the IMF program which was signed gave you as a primary deficit, now this is getting a bit technical, of about 0.6% of GDP. What that means is that you can, whatever revenues you have, your expenditures can only be 0.6% of GDP more than those revenues. So basically all your debt servicing which you have to make for your foreign loans and the interest payments, to make those payments you have to borrow more money, and that is part of the agreement. But the targeted subsidy in the budget in which it was considerably enhanced in Kamyab Pakistan and SAS program, it is a very essential part of the policy framework of targeting poverty, below the poverty line people, and be able to support them in various ways. Now the negotiations with the IMF will involve hopefully some waivers that we can do this subsidy for the very vulnerable segments of society, and for that the systems are in place. Now we have digitalized all the transfer mechanisms, and we have all the addresses, and we know where these people are. who have neither any assets, like in the rural areas, if you look at the farmers, 60% of your population is in the rural economy, and this year they have got some very good prices for their crops, and they are they are not suffering that much as these poor people are. Similarly, when you look at your remittances, Pakistan is a remittance economy. Almost 60% of Pakistan's GDP is services sector, and that services sector is driven by remittances. And the urban areas, people have low income families have somebody who is sending them some remittance. So I think at the end of the day, it is those people who have neither any remittances nor do they have any assets. They need very targeted kind of subsidies. And we have, for example, the Kisan card, the health card, the housing, special provision for housing, special provision for technical training and entrepreneurship. All these things are very, very targeted. Now,
Right.
in
Dr.
theory,
Targeted they might be, but earlier you were talking about a SAS program and how to actually, dispense with money, right? Distribute money. That might be a direct method. But when it comes to fuel prices, which are hiking today, the government, federal government actually was proposing that they are going to come up with targeted subsidies for motorcyclists and rickshaw drivers of smaller vehicles. How do you execute that, sir? You don't have any meter or a camera on every fuel station to gauge whether they are actually honestly selling it to the needy or the person who deserves it or to anybody who will pay more money.
well, I think that can also be digitized, and you can have cards with specific names and quota for a certain amount, which cannot be exceeded. But these days there is technology, and the solution lies in technology. So it's not going to be that you go to a gas station and you say fill it up, and then in the receipt it says it was for a motorbike. No, it won't be like that. I think technology will be used, and there are many ways of targeting the subsidy.
Right. That's heartening to hear, actually. I don't know whether we are that quick with technology, because the customer or consumer distress is now immediate.
Yeah.
But is there any silver lining when it comes to the inflation situation, Ramesh sir?
Look, the targeted subsidy they are talking about, from where you will get the money?
Yeah.
You are borrowing the money to pay back your debt,
Yeah.
and you are running pole to pole.
Yeah.
And from where you get so much money to distribute at such a huge scale.
Okay.
One thing, and second thing, this is a patchwork. What is the solution?
Okay.
Solution is the production sector.
Mhm.
Either you are putting all the efforts to bring the production into momentum,
Okay.
either it's agriculture or it's industrialization.
Mhm.
So what you have did during the last 3 years for industrialization, where is the work you have, did you complete the work on this SSEs?
Okay.
So the thing is, I'm not interested in patchwork. Every 5 years government comes, they say, oh, we are giving this subsidies. Ultimately, the people are paying.
Yeah.
In the term of, if you look at the taxes, it's inflation is one of the key areas, increase in the taxes, are the prices, the indirect wage, are the prices of the fuel. Who is paying?
Okay.
People. After this government, another government will come and say, this was a mistake of the past. So what is the policy outline to give a relief, not just a patchwork? It's like that you are giving them a painkiller for a short term. In the long term, you are leaving all the symptoms there.
Right, because we have repeatedly referred to inflation. Let me ask you, usually in inflation, one thinks that jobs actually go up. Is it happening?
Jobs? Look,
Yeah.
look, what is the driver of inflation? That is the fuel.
Okay.
So fuel we are importing.
Right.
Either we are getting that producing
No,
the fuel.
are you telling me that it is not inflation, it is stagflation?
It's a tech, you can say that one of anybody to talk in the government, they say oil prices are increasing, this is happening, that's why prices of everything is increasing.
Okay.
So they then start claiming that. One thing, second thing, you are more than 92%, your GDP comes from the consumption.
Yeah.
Consumption has been from where you, and these programs like this ASAS program during the COVID-19.
Sorry, come again with the number. How much?
Then more than 92%.
Can you cite any?
Economic survey, you can go and look at
Okay,
it.
92 seems very.
It was higher. You can ask Salman Saad. It was higher.
Okay.
So they're trying to bring it down.
Right.
Sometimes they say it's 84%, sometimes say 86%, sometimes say no, it's 80%. But you go to check what is the level of their consumption coming, GDP growth coming from the consumption sector.
I can actually hypothetically talk endlessly about how bad we have been, and that's why we deserve what we are going through. But the question is, if you are a voter, if you are a citizen, if you are a taxpayer, you are going through a lot of distress. What is the way out?
They don't have any way out. What they're doing, they are doing the patchwork.
Okay.
They are not presenting the way out. Is only one thing on sustainable basis, that you need to enhance your production capacity.
Okay.
So
what for production?
Production, industrialization of your country.
You just told me that it is basically because of oil imports. How do you produce more
That's
oil?
what I'm saying. You asked me why the jobs has been increased due to that inflation.
No,
that I'm telling you, their data does not qualify that. It is not due to the oversupply or the lower demand of the commodity or something like that.
Okay.
Jobs and over demand from the people. That's why prices are hiking. No.
Okay.
It is like that. You are saying the main trigger of your inflation coming from the imported fuel.
Yeah.
That's why we are increasing the price again
Actually,
and again for everything.
It kind of worries me at this moment, Dr. Salman Shah, when I'm talking to economists and I don't hear a solution, immediate solution. Is there a way out at this moment to relieve the common man's burden?
Yes, Farrukh, you must realize that this government has been in power for only 3 years.
Yeah.
All the other governments have been here for many, many years, decades. So to expect that you can turn around everything in 3 years is, I think, being too optimistic. I think in the 5-year term, by 2023, the reforms which are being implemented, if they are fully implemented, you would have a lot of industrialization, at least in Punjab. And you will also have a lot of industrialization through Chinese MNCs who are showing great interest in investing in Pakistan. But they want to invest in any city they want, and the most attractive places are Karachi and Lahore. So I think these issues are being sorted out so that they can be accommodated over here. And our investment to GDP ratio has been lagging behind India and Bangladesh for a very long time. In 2006, our investment to GDP ratio was 20%, which has now come down to almost 14% over the last 10 years, and it hasn't really improved. So I think we need to have an investment focus, and at the same time we need to build up our reserves. Now the reserves we can build up through a number of ways. We did in 2006 we built up almost $8 to $10 billion of reserves through GDRs, through capital market Eurobonds. We had privatization of lots of non-productive assets which became very productive in private hands. So a similar kind of program is in place, and with the IMF program behind you, you can execute these things. And as you build up your reserves, the stability of the rupee will automatically emerge. And also this imported inflation phenomena will not last for the next 2 years. Maybe over the next 3 or 4 months, if international oil prices, as they went up, they might also come down, because we know that American shale oil industry is gearing up very fast, and they are going to be increasing their production because they become viable at around $50 a barrel. And so most of the shale oil is now becoming available. CPEC also increased their production, etc. So we have to wait and see what
Right.
happens over the next
So,
few years.
essentially, Dr. Saab, what you're saying is that at this moment, whatever policy measures the government had, whatever policy levels the government had, it is using, and despite that, we have this inflation, so we'll have to wait it out. Now, let me ask you
So-
about the exchange rate. Exchange
Can I
rate.
just
Yeah,
Can
please
I
go
ask,
ahead.
can I just add that the Privatization Commission is ready to privatize the LNG power plants, which can be done in the next 3 months. We can issue GDRs on OGDC, PPL, POL, PSO, all the public sector companies, because the oil prices are up. Their values internationally will be up, and we can list them on the London Stock Exchange and raise quite handsome amounts of dollars, which we can place in our reserves. Also,
Right,
we have
and-
got deferred payment on oil from Saudi Arabia. We have revived that, so that should help your reserves. And of course, the other countries can also help in this whole thing. And one positive thing which may happen over the next 6 months to a year is that our trade with Afghanistan will certainly go up, and the connections to Central Asia might open up. CPEC will be extended to Central Asia. And those are
Right.
things which were not possible in the last 10 years, which
Right,
have
and
become.
we are going to talk about that, sir, with your permission. Allow me to come back to the studio. I wanted to talk about exchange rate phenomenon, but before that, let me ask Shakil Rami if you want to add to this issue of price control, because it seems that there are many bottlenecks, right? You talked about importing stuff. That is one thing. International costs. Then there's weakening rupee. Then there's the issue of jobbery, of black marketing, right? And people who actually keep on stocking things and they don't distribute. Their cartelization as well. So how do you actually, is there a way out at all at this moment, or we are just going to wait?
You used the word bottleneck.
Yeah.
So where is the neck of the bottle?
Okay. And what is it then?
At the
A
top.
blob?
At the top.
Okay. Okay.
You are searching the stuff on the ground, but the neck is somewhere else.
Okay.
So you need to focus there where you can bring
No,
down.
no, don't be philosophical. Explain
No,
what you mean.
that is for, let me complete, then you can comment.
Has the
But that's what-
bottle's neck is up. What do you mean by that?
So that means the policy flow, the
Yeah.
decisions,
Yeah.
like when I say the production sector, but
Yeah.
we are hearing a lot about the privatization. I'll just give you one example.
Yeah.
Did anybody tell us what would be the volume of the liabilities which we have to pay from those amounts which we will be getting from the privatization?
Right, but at least that will
No,
lessen our burden.
what is the amount of that liabilities?
Yeah, but
You will, at the end, you will be left with no assets
are you
and no money.
Are you hang on? Are you talking about circular debt now or something else?
No, they are talking about
Liability
privatization
only.
of, no, they are talking about the privatization of certain state-owned enterprises.
Yeah,
And as Salman Shah Sahab has talked about,
he was talking about CNGL.
and no, privatization.
Yeah, but particularly.
Privatization, so what will be left after paying out all the liabilities?
Which liability?
Like you are going to privatize steel mill, for example.
Yeah.
So what is the level of the liabilities of the steel mill?
Okay,
So how many workers you have to give? You have to give the golden handshake scheme.
okay.
So what is their debt? Number of things which are happening. That I don't want to go there, but just wanted to comment on that.
Okay.
On the prices, look, prices according to the statements of the current situation, for the lowering the prices, especially of the electricity and three things,
Okay.
we have to wait for when the prices of oil will be lower in the international market.
Okay. So that means no proactivity. We have to be
But
reactive.
they can offer.
We
But
have to tell the people, grow a thicker skin and just wait.
that is only way out, because IMF, you are negotiating a deal with them. We will increase the taxes. We will increase we will eliminate the subsidies.
No, but with due respect, all, subsidies don't go to the common man. They go to very rich also.
That you already said. So that is,
You don't have to tax only levy more indirect taxes. You can go for direct taxes.
it will not happen, because indirect tax, then the private sector says, look, business environment is not good in your country, we are shifting our business. So if you have to tax, go for interest. Look, this problem is complicated. It's not like that I can tell you the recipe, oh, you will do this and the prices will come down. No, we have to grow up, as you said, and we have to work for start from the policy orientation where we want to go.
Yeah,
right now we don't
I'm
have.
sorry, if I
right
cannot,
now,
if my child, God forbid, if my child is ill and I cannot afford a medicine and the illness grows, I'm not going to wait for your policy interventions.
that's
I'm
happening.
going to just say that you cannot.
You have option you can talk about. Look, those are people who are living below the poverty and they are actually doing this.
No, I'm
They are
talking about
waiting. Why
the common
why
citizen.
the people go to these all the bullshit people to go for the
Exactly.
dum karwa lo, doodh karwa lo.
Yeah, but please don't use such language on air. But let me come back to
Sorry for that.
Dr. Salman Shah Sahab. Dr. Sahab, since we are talking about price hike and factors which might have contributed, one of them seems to be weakening currency. Why is it that Pakistani rupee keeps on going down, down, down?
Because we don't have sufficient reserves. As I said, we only have about 3.5 months of reserves, and that is not enough to send a signal to the market that the state bank can intervene and prop up the rupee. If we had like 5 to 6 months of reserves, then the state bank has the ability to intervene and keep the rupee value in a very narrow band. So I think that if we can put some money through privatization, through capital market transactions into our reserves, build those reserves up, the value of the rupee will move from 175, maybe it will come down to 160. And that means you can control inflation. At the same time, your debt servicing will come down. And so the benefits of privatization and building up reserves is also very indirectly helping you with inflation. It is helping you with investment climate, and it will also generate a momentum for other multinationals to also come in, particularly Chinese multinationals. So all of these
Dr. Saab, can you give us a number regarding foreign currency reserves? Because one has to know how many dollars do we need to shore up before we can actually escape this trap?
I think our reserves, the central bank reserves need to be closer to $30 billion, above $30 billion. So if we get to that level, there will be a momentum for investment, and it will encourage stability of the rupee, bring inflation down, and also create an environment for steady growth, which is very important. And the IMF has agreed that our economy will grow around 4%. But I think if our reserves are strengthened, we could even think of a higher growth rate, because that means that we can sustain the current account deficit and also the value of the rupee.
Right. Regarding remittances, you mentioned them twice. Despite so much infusion, we keep on seeing that current account deficit is still an issue. In addition, I wanted you to help us understand, recently a lot of people read in the papers, including me, that IMF had transferred billions of dollars to various countries, including India and Pakistan, SDR money, right? Where did that go? Was it only theoretical, or what was the use of that, sir?
Look, a lot of money was given in direct transfers to individual recipients, plus through the central bank there was support given to the banks to extend loans to companies so that they don't have to shut down. And I think the state bank has all the accounts over there, and the package was over $1 trillion, more 1,200 trillion rupees. That was what kept the economy moving. That's why our neither the agriculture value chains nor the manufacturing facilities closed down for a long period of time, and logistics was also maintained. So I think that the entire system, we should not forget, COVID was a very vicious pandemic, It happens almost once in 100 years, and we were able to manage it better than most countries. So I think that we need to keep working very diligently towards this whole effort, and rupee has to be stabilized. This is very important, and that stability comes from our reserves. So if we
that is a good point, sir. Allow me to come back to the studio. Shakil Rami sahab, is there a possibility that recent spike in dollars prices is because Pakistan is bleeding too many dollars to Afghanistan, because there seems to be illegal trade somehow, the money, because there is a vacuum in Afghanistan of currency, that a lot of money might be going there. We heard certain ministers also pointing out that kind of a scenario, and then action that they will be cracked down on money exchanges. Do you think that that is a factor?
I don't have any information about that, so I can validate either it's happening
What
or not.
can you validate?
No, I don't have any information.
Okay.
So it's just a rumors people are saying here and say there.
Yeah.
If the government have information, they must have go for the crackdown much before time. But I don't want to correlate.
Let me qualify. Hang on. Let me qualify why I'm bringing this up. Right? Dr. Saab mentioned Afghanistan. You mentioned Afghanistan. He mentioned CPEC. You mentioned CPEC. Right? And this is a big concern that it can eventually grow into Afghanistan. Right? The question is, when we cannot control these basic commodities from being smuggled into Afghanistan, how are you going to actually benefit from the opportunities?
So what you are smuggling from Afghanistan right now?
To Afghanistan.
Afghanistan. No.
I'm told that we have to conclude the program here. There's a breaking news, so we have to take up. We have to conclude the program here. We will continue this discussion, Shakil Rami, in the future. Thank you very much for being part of the program, Dr. Salman Shah Saab. Always great having you in the show. Thank you very much for your valuable time. This was the time we had today, so we have to conclude. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.